and I'm now going to put on the multi-stream as well.
So hello, Judy. How are you? Where are you located?
I am doing fine. I am in Grenada in the Caribbean. We are Southern Caribbean. We are south. We're very close to Trinidad and Tobago. We're like 30 minutes flying when there is flying. And about 45 minutes from Barbados.
Oh, wow. Definitely an area I've never seen.
You need to come. It's beautiful.
Well, I would like to. I've been a little bit more global recently, but it's been more in the Mexico area. I need to become a little more worldly, I think.
Well, most of the Caribbean islands are open. I know certainly we are open here in Grenada. If you're fully vaccinated, you spend like 48 hours. Quarantine. If you're not vaccinated, 7 days, and you have to come with a negative test. Then on the 5th day, they test you, and then the 7th day, if you're negative, then you can go. But there are some islands that's 14 days, 9 days, depending. I went to Jamaica earlier this year. I was in Jamaica in April.
Really?
And well, Jamaica has different types of entries, which makes it really good because their hospitality industry is really, really good. So you can come in through the resiliency corridor, and you come in through Montego Bay, and you stay in one of the hotels. So we stayed at Sandals Beaches. It was my last daughter's 16th birthday. So we stayed at Sandals Beaches, and they have everything really. So we didn't come out and go anywhere.
How nice.
Come back in, spend 7 days in quarantine, and that's it.
Now, do you guys have like a vaccination card? Because I've been hearing a little. So everybody has to show their vaccination card.
Everybody who has a vaccine, because it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory. So
interesting.
I like to travel, so I had my vaccine.
Interesting.
Yes, me too. Were the beaches pretty open? Were there less people on the beaches?
Well, beaches had the hotel had probably around 60% occupancy. So the Sandals brand, because they just have every single thing that you would want on property. It's easy to go and stay on property, and do everything that you want, because they have the government have the required tours, so you will do the tours with the group. If you have to come out, then I guess that's something else altogether. But they had like about 60% occupancy.
Well, we are about to get started here, so I'm going to see if I can share the right screen here. Unfortunately, I'm not. This is not it.
Well, there you are. There's our Facebook page, prompting.
Yeah. Let me see if I can share the right screen here, so we can get started with everyone. And I think, all right, yeah, I think I'm caught up.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Sam has lots of screens.
Yes, too many at times, and I get lost. So let's go ahead and get started. Could you kick us off here, Shar?
You bet. Well, hey, welcome. We just appreciate all of you participating with us. We are the People Strategies Forum, and we are so excited to have this continue. We started this, gosh, I think we're going on to 70, probably late 60 or 70 now, of these great, wonderful people strategy forums. So as you can see on this screen, we're a mastermind of leaders dedicated to creating workplaces where people thrive, employers reward, and customers love. So we really hope you really enjoy all the great information that we're sharing to help your businesses thrive. Here is your host. So my name is Shar Miller. I'm a people strategist. I've had just the amazing experience being a people strategist for over 25 years. I don't even know if I want to say over 25 years these days, but it has been that long. And I also am happy to say that I do career coaching for those going through transition. And also I'm a very proud owner of a company called Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. So everything that we learn in our people strategy forums, I apply to my company. And I think it's made a world of a difference. Also, this is Sam Reed. And Sam is the founder and the CEO of Comp Team. And he has just been a delight. I've worked with him for several years and his Comp Team, and look at the companies that he's worked with as a compensation and total rewards expert. And also he really is the one that is the driving force around the People Strategy Forum. So thank you, Sam. And I also want to mention Sumit Singla is here. He's also a people strategist, and he usually is on board with us, but he has not been feeling that well. Obviously, he is from India, and so they have been going through some getting through the COVID, getting through the COVID process. So but he's here in spirit. So hi, Sumit, if you're on with us today. So so today we are about an hour long. And I want to introduce you to our just wonderful guest speaker, Judy Mccutchen, and she is an organizational redesign consultant. She will talk about this, but she's all about what she calls the Go Blue. I understand she had a huge event, and very much a people advocate. So she's all about people and how we work with our employees, also very much about learning and development, particularly during this post-COVID time. We're just talking about how important that is. So you can see here on our bio screen, she's from the Caribbean. And so Judy, I'm sure you'll be able to explain a little bit more locally where you're from, but you'll see here she talks about everything from HR, revenue streams, how to help companies, organizational design, very big about mid-sized type of companies, and also helping to create very happy and positive workplace for middle managers. And so obviously, since I'm I own my company, but this speaks right to my heart. So welcome, Judy. I am so happy to have you on board with us today. And also, before we get started, I just want to mention that down below we have a chat, and please participate with us. We love it. We love participation. So if you are watching us today, please pop your questions in the chat. I also just want to say, please reply to all the panelists and the attendees so everybody can see your question. I will do my best to monitor the questions and interject those questions into our discussion, because this is very much a discussion-oriented forum. And so today we're going to be talking about talent management post-COVID. So what an on-target topic. And then at the end, we're going to have an open dialogue, and then we'll talk a little bit about our sponsor, which is the TMA. So welcome, Judy. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I am doing wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's a beautiful rainy day here in Grenada.
Nice.
It has been raining all week.
Nice and green, I take it.
Oh, yes, it is. It is
Yes.
very nice and green. I love when it rains.
I love it too. I wish I had more rain in Colorado.
I know it's pretty hot there right now, right?
Yeah.
So Judy, so I know that you're a not just an HR expert, but you're also a financial expert to help companies be profitable through their people and so forth. So can you tell us a little bit more about your process there as far as how you help companies and so forth?
All right. Well, as a consultant, well, first I'm trained as an accountant, but I don't practice. So I don't really do that work with companies at all. But I work specifically with them and their people, because you hear it say, and it sounds extremely cliche, companies don't succeed, people do. it may sound cliche, but it really is simply the truth. If you don't work with your people and if you don't treat your people right, then you're leaving a lot of money on the table. When you look at the various engagement reports, you're seeing the level of engagement. I saw that it went up slightly, but it is still significantly low. So employees are disengaged. And when that happens, companies are leaving so much money on the table. So my strategy is always people first, and that's the motto of my company. It's a people first company. I don't want to work with a company that where the people don't come first, because that's a lot of problems. So I would not work with a company that will not treat their people right or isn't interested in starting to treat their people right.
Yeah, and then that's a topic that I've spoken a lot about, because I call it the kind of like the three-legged stool concept. When you have to have your the owners of the company, of course, are quite important, but they also have your employees that interact and create products and services for your customers, and your customers need to continually reinvest in the company for it to be successful. And so if either of those components are weak or get ignored, the company is not going to be successful. So I'm glad to hear that you're a people first person. That's where I am as well. So I believe in that strongly.
Yep.
So tell us, I mean, with through COVID and so forth, and there's been a lot of changes in how we look at talent management, and specifically, I think a lot of companies have come to realize that they need to look at their people in a more humanistic way, understanding the pressures that they're under and so forth. What experiences have you seen there?
Well, for one, first, let's look and see what COVID did, what happened. We had massive displacement. We had unemployment, right? We had unemployment across the board. I'm still trying to figure out a company that has been around for the last 50 years, making profit, 1 year, and you can't sustain your employees. But that's a conversation for another time, right? We have a lot of rising costs because, of course, in the Caribbean, there are a lot of things that we don't make, we have to import. Especially here where we are in Grenada, we import 90% of the things that we consume. So our import is high. And with all ports closed, all borders closed, we really had a problem with food and that kind of, because we have to import most of our stuff, right? So that was one problem. And then you had, so you see that there was a shift in a lot of people had to, I don't like the word pivot, so I'm just going to say a shift towards independent employment, right? Because the tourist sector is what we survive on. Yes. And if everything closed, people have had to find ways to survive. So with all the hotels closed, now, you see people having to everywhere you see things springing up where people are trying to survive. So people have really been displaced. Families have lost both incomes. So that has been a lot of the shift that has happened. Well, some of the shift that has happened with us. So you see people doing the farming. It's really, for me, that was nice because you see a lot more fresh produce that you could just buy by the side of the road. So that one was really, really, really a good thing. And then now companies now have to look at how they can make talent a priority, because with so much unemployment, you wonder if it's you wonder what kind of market it is. Is it an employee market or an employer market with so much? So companies have to look now at how they need a different talent strategy. They need a different talent strategy. You know, and they need to make training a priority. One thing that we do very well is, as soon as something happens, the first thing we do is cut our training budgets. I'm sure you know about that.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's almost as if I always equate it to life insurance. You have life insurance, and as soon as you have one little thing happen, the first thing you cut is your life insurance policy. So, and that's what that is what has happened. Like, companies won't training, companies won't do any kind of development. But you know, in times like these, in crises, whether it is a man-made crisis or it's a natural, some kind of natural disaster, we need to keep our training budget going, because we need to reskill and upskill the people that we have so that they can manage.
Right. And in your experience, as far as this crisis has brought on, what I've heard is that, and I've experienced through my clients, is that they need training to show people how to work remotely and be successful, how to manage remote employees. You know, and I know that remote is something that is probably not so acute in your area as much as it is in other parts of the world. But and is that true, by the way? I mean, I think last time.
That is true. So in Grenada,
Yeah.
Right now we have no cases, and we've had no cases for ever. And so things are open and people are going to work. So people are still going to work. You still have some companies that's doing a rotation. So companies are still doing a rotation where you work some days in, some days off, but largely people are going to work. In Trinidad and Tobago, where everything is just the virus there is just totally out of control. Totally out of control. Um, Everything is locked down, so people definitely have to work from home. So managing the remote process has it's a challenge, because for one, even managing the process while your staff is in the office is a challenge. And how do you supervise? And we have a thing where we want to see you to think that you're working. You know, we have to see you. I had a boss once who said to me, "Judy, you know, work begins at 8." And I said, "Okay, no problem. I can come for 8, but I'm leaving at 5, and do not call me on the weekends."
Right.
Yeah.
So they have to see you. Now, I come in at 9. I leave whenever the work is done. If you need a project, you're going to get the project done. Even if it takes me up to midnight, I'm going to do it. You can call me on Sunday if you have a problem, and I will leave my family and I will come and work. So they asked me to come to work for 8 o'clock. I don't know. I think it's unreasonable. Employers may not think so, but I think that if I'm doing all of that, and it's the same thing that we do, we think that when the employees are at home, they're not productive. But I can tell you, it is like I work from home now. I work more than if I was going out to an office to work. So there is no everything just kind of mesh into one. There's no kind of timeline, no boundary from here to there. So employees are working a lot harder than they were.
Yeah, I found that true as well. Yeah. And is that what you've seen, Shar?
Oh yeah, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, I'm actually really reflecting on this, because I think it's often my experience, it's the middle managers that get the biggest impact, or the salaried employees, because the hourly employees, you know, as organizations are cutting costs, they're reducing the hours for the hourly frontline staff. Well, who's picking up all the weight? It's the salaried staff, right? Like the middle management staff that is getting called on the weekends and called in the evenings. And then back to your island point. I did get an opportunity to travel this last year to both Puerto Vallarta and also to Belize. And you are absolutely right. Little Belize, yeah, actually San Pedro Island, Madonna song. But I actually found it very fascinating. You're absolutely right, because this was like my third visit to Belize, and I had not seen so much focus on local produce that I had seen on this third visit, and the focus on locally grown on the island produce. And also the focus on wildlife and wildlife preservation. So my first visit to Belize, which was in 2017, it was all about the tourism, right? So it was all about boats and the tourism and the trinkets that you buy on the beach. And then the third time, obviously it was kind of the same, but this last time was in the middle of the COVID shutdown. And the focus was really about, like you said, the produce, the food, and things that could be produced on the island and not necessarily brought in or shipped in because they couldn't get the staff to do the shipping to the island.
Yeah, and I think that's a good.
You're absolutely right.
I think that's a good point, Shar, because when we're thinking about islands, I mean, it's a microcosm, or when you put them under pressure, they have to adapt and be very agile and resilient and so forth. And I know, Judy, you just did a long discussion on resiliency. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the presentation I did was on building a culture of resilience within your organization. And because we're just coming out of a crisis, and because we are always going to have some form of disruption or the other, we are always going to have it. When this pandemic is done, I promise you something else is going to be around the corner. So two things that we have to learn and we have to bear in mind as it relates to that, right? Disasters and crises, they're more frequent than we think, because if you look back for the last decade or so, you would see a bunch. So we have volcanoes erupting everywhere. We had one in St. Vincent, we had one in the Dominican Republic, the Republic of Congo, then we had one in Iceland. They are happening a lot more. The Japan post the tsunami, it's still an issue. So we have a lot of, and we have hurricanes consistently. So they are happening more frequent than we think. And secondly, our infrastructures, our societies, and our economies are vulnerable. It doesn't matter whether you're in the Caribbean, whether you're in the US, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in Europe, we are vulnerable. Right? Those are two lessons that we should learn from crisis. And then, so knowing that is an issue, we now as organizations, we have to learn to now build that resilience. How do we remain sustainable? Because really the reason why you have an organization in the first place is to be sustainable. How do you meet your objectives to remain sustainable, right? So as an organization, you have to build resilience. And it is my thinking that resilience is built on three elements: human resilience, organizational resilience, and resilient leadership.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Oh, I absolutely love what you're saying. And I think it ties in nicely. A gentleman by the name of Anton Schumack is actually speaking to us on the chat. And by the way, Anton, if you could also copy all the attendees, that would be great. But you just talked about those 3 levels of resilience. So here's his question that ties to, I think, what you're pointing out, Judy. It says, as we are coming out of this crisis, I believe the human brain has been negatively impacted, possibly more than any other time over the last 50 years. Do you think, Judy, that middle managers are prepared to support mental health, motivation, and poor decision-making issues stemming from this pandemic in the way to help recover our team members' minds? And what should they be doing to ensure that they're mitigating employee burnout? And then my thought about that is, so you have all these natural disasters plus the pandemic. So how do we deal with the mental issues and employee burnout? And what would you recommend managers or executives do during this period?
I love this question. I love this question. I love this question so much, I have no idea. What I have seen is that this entire responsibility for employees' mental health has rest with HR and that middle management group.
Right.
So I have a couple thoughts on that. One, they're not equipped to do that. They themselves have their own mental health to be dealt with. So we have to remember, as organizations, that our managers are humans. They are humans. So we can't expect them, and we put a lot of pressure on them to ensure that the entry-level staff are okay and everything is going right with them and everything is going right with them. But as an organization, the organization itself has to put things in place to ensure that everybody is okay. And this is where they need EPA programs. Because if I'm an HR manager and HR officer, I am not equipped. I'm really not equipped to help a staff that is suffering from any kind of mental health issues or burnout issues or anything like that. So the organization has to put things in place to ensure that all the employees, from the senior level manager right down to the janitor, is taken care of, because we have all been affected. All of us have been affected. During COVID, my father died and my brother died, and I couldn't go home. I
So
couldn't
sorry.
go because everything was closed, you know?
So sorry.
So a lot of employees went through that. So there's that bereavement issue, and then that extra thing where you can't go for closure. So we have to ensure that organization have to put things in place. Yes, your middle managers can listen, because that is really important. They can communicate by listening. They can check in and ask, how are you doing? Because it's the human thing to do. How are you doing? Are you okay? How can I assist?
Which
But
means
there has to be a EAP program in place. There must be.
And constant communication. So even through technology, constant touch points. I mean, that's what I attempted to do during our shutdown, and constantly touching base with my employees. Also, I recall in my former days working as a junior HR person, we used to just hand out like EAP brochures. I now look back. So for example, in the nursing world, sometimes we would have like a suicide, sadly, not to get deep here, but we would have a suicide. And so at one of our employees. So I think we weren't always well equipped because we weren't behavioral health experts, but we'd have these EAP pamphlets. And so the HR people would go out and hand them out at the meetings and stuff. But that really wasn't the most compassionate thing to do. And now what you're talking about is that we have employees that really are having Like even our colleague, he's home ill. We have family members passing away from COVID. Almost everybody knows somebody that they loved or cared about. It's a whole new dimension of an EIP support system. Would you not agree?
Yep, definitely. We have to rethink. We really have to. It really cannot be business as usual. Can't be business as usual. We have to rethink the way we deal with our employees. I know that there are a lot of companies who think that their customers come first, but I really have news for them. It could never be your customers. It is impossible for it to be your customers. It has to be your employees, because without your employees, you have no customers. You really, really don't.
That's right.
You know, so
and you don't have revenue, and you don't have, you know, all the bottom line and the outcomes that you're looking for if you don't take care of your talent.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and it just comes back to that point you were mentioning earlier, Judy, is that when companies are looking for cost savings, a lot of times they're tempted to cut programs that are so essential, such as in not investing in an employee assistance program, the EAP, as we've been talking about, something that is so important now during the mental health crises that all companies are experiencing across the board. All of us are experiencing. So, you know, I think that, you know, how do we, fortunately, and in my experience in pre-pandemic, I haven't looked at these programs recently, but EAP programs are fairly affordable and are a high value type of an investment for a company. Now, I don't know, I was looking at Anton's question here in the forum. Do you have any, does anybody understand the ROI on these programs or the costs that are related to some of these?
Say that again, Tom.
So I believe that the EAP programs, the employee assistance programs, are fairly affordable for a lot of companies. But when you counsel your clients, Judy, do you mention any kind of return on investment numbers or on these programs, or?
No, because I haven't done a survey on that. I haven't done a study on it to see, and I haven't looked lately to see what the numbers are, because it's something that I follow, but I haven't looked lately to see what the numbers are. But I can bet you that it is, you get a high, there's a high ROI on that, because let's say, for example, so let's just take one simple scenario, for example, right? If you have a staff member that is financially strapped, totally maxed out in debt, completely maxed out in debt, they owe everybody, every single person they owe everybody on the job. And this is stuff that I know, right? So they owe everybody. And that is a constant worry. That really is a mental health issue. It is really a mental health issue. And when you have an employee like that, what happens is this: they're not paying attention to the work.
Yeah.
And not focused on your work. And they spend half out of the 8 or 9 hours on the phone trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And that is an every single day situation. Right? So that's low productivity. Right?
Well, as an HR leader that has kind of grown up in the field, I had to learn business acumen in order to be able to translate the return on investment from a people standpoint. Hi, Sumit. I love the fact that you just piped in here. Sumit mentions, yes, there's a lot of secondary research on return on investment on wellness programs. So in some of my background, yes, we did analyze number of days missed, number of worker comp days, because a lot of times worker comp is not always exactly workers comp, right? Also, we measured employee engagement, obviously. We measured actual productivity. We measured customer satisfaction. And then my job and my team's job was to partner with those other departments, like the service excellence departments, the strategy departments, the departments that measured those things and correlate it with the HR measurements, and then work to try to make the connection.
Right.
And oftentimes in big companies, and I know you focus a lot on mid-sized companies, those departments are all siloed, so they're not really talking to one another.
Mhm.
So my power is collaboration, they always say. So I was the one that was always trying to get the heads of these departments with the HR people, with the recruiting people, with the strategy and the numbers people, finance people, and just sit down and really have a heart to heart to say, how can all this be correlated, to talk about why wellness of our employees makes a difference to the bottom line. So that's my personal answer, but love to see
Oh,
what.
and that's true. I spoke to general manager once. We were talking about, some personal financial wellness support in terms of training and strategies and so on. And he said to me, well, I don't think that is the business of my organization. I think maybe the union should do that. But I just see Summit posted something. I can't see it again, but it's a startling number, 11 million something.
Yeah, that
So-
was Submit. Mhm.
And so Sumit said in the UK, they estimate that a total of 11 million personal days are lost a year due to mental health issues. So
That is significant. You know
Yeah.
how much money companies are leaving on the table? That's a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean, and when you just look at the workplace disruption, work disruption, customer impact, there's a lot of hidden costs here, definitely, that are related to mental health.
And not only that, Sam and Shar, what about theft?
Mhm.
What about theft? Because
Yeah.
they will steal.
Mhm.
They will steal from
Yeah,
you.
if there's definitely desperation.
Yes, they will.
Right. Well, one of the strategies I personally am using is, now that I'm really spending more time with the one-on-ones with my leaders and my employees, and I'm actually having frank, honest, transparent, authentic conversations about mental health. And I even encourage that they take a mental health day if they need it. I'd
Yeah.
much rather my employee take a couple of mental health days rather than one either quit or, ghost us and disappear,
Yeah.
or maybe take 2-3 weeks off. But if we talk about it and are open about it, it seems to help curb the number of days lost.
Mhm.
I totally agree. Having flexibility there, because I think managers need to have more flexibility around their employees when it comes to mental health. If we just think about the bad impressions that it has on customers and our own people that we work with, if we have a person that comes in and it just happens to be an off day for them, that can do a significant amount of damage if you're a customer-centric organization. Or if it'll spread across your coworkers quite easily. So it's those being more flexible with mental health and having mental health days, I think, is critical in a business.
Yeah. We need to normalize the conversation around mental health. In the Caribbean, right? We think that when we say mental health, we think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah,
sad there's a stigma out there. It's
Yeah,
not
it
a
is.
stigma.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
If you say, I am going to a psychologist, everybody think like, you're crazy. Why are you going to something wrong with you?
Mhm.
And so we don't deal with mental health properly here because the stigma is if anything mental health, is that you're insane, you're crazy. So it's not something that's normalized. Um, it's not something that normalized here. So even if employers have EAP programs, um, employees don't take advantage of it. I was dealing with a company and we couldn't even finish the training because we'd gone in to do, there's this one department, the conflict was just out of this world crazy. And I had asked them to give me some data because they had done they had used an assessment when they hire them. So I said, can I have a copy of the assessment? And the thing is, when I look at the assessment, I realize that you know, whoever put this team together didn't look at these assessments at all as they would put this team together. But what I know for sure is that one of the girls, she really had some issues, not so much mental health, but more psychological issues that she needed to deal with, that she brought to work. And of course, you have to bring it to work because it's you. You can't leave it at the door. And she just didn't take advantage of the EAP. It was a difficult situation, and it was difficult to look at because I know all she needed to do was just talk to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, just open up to somebody. So it's a challenge for us here.
Yes.
You know what? I am seeing here a ton of chats going on, by the way, Judy. I love these numbers, people, because I'm not. But one, I think Anton said this, an old statistic is that businesses lose, I think he means 300 billion annually due to unmanaged stress. Estimate that could be 10 times more than what we actually connect the issues to the root cause of stress. So this is what companies lose. And then I think this is from Submit, or maybe it's from Anton. It says, even in Australia at Deloitte, yeah, this might be Submit because he worked at Deloitte. We estimated that for every dollar you spend on creating mental health workplace, you stand to gain 2 to 2.5.
Yeah, so it's 150% return on investment. So I think the important thing here is that leadership needs to promote the use of these programs. I mean, and each piece. I think one of the worst things that HR has done in the past 10 to 20 years is that they roll out programs and then they fail to continually promote and have ongoing communication around those programs to encourage people to use them, to encourage people to get in their 401k, to encourage, you know, if you're in the US, or retirement programs and the EAP. There's a lot of hidden gems in EAP programs, from legal advice, financial advice, to you know, finding a babysitter. I mean, there's tons of little things that they provide there, and there's a lot of opportunities for HR to add value to their employees' lives and simplifying them, and just by simply utilizing that program more effectively, taking the stigma away.
Right. In fact, Elena Blenis, who's a dear colleague of mine, and she's outstanding. She is a patient advocate, and she's just now a board certified patient advocate. She's working now on working with employers on going in to help employees that are dealing with ill family members, or those that are dealing with COVID or other types of health matters, to be a patient advocate for those employees. And so in my conversations with Elaine, she said that why wouldn't an employer sponsor those types of programs to help an employee deal with those struggles in their life? And it's like, I think traditional HR mindset would never think about patient advocacy to support your employees, right?
HR has, even though I do a lot of work surrounding HR, HR really troubles me a lot. It
Yes.
really troubles me. They trouble me because I wonder about the people that go into HR, because HR is a people business. It is a people business, and you have to be for, I guess, all. It has to be for all. So you cannot. And what I my experience has been is that HR, because a lot of companies don't look at HR as strategic, which I think is such a mistake. Um, HR isn't given the importance that it should be given. So, you think, oh, that's a HR thing, that's a HR thing, that's a HR thing. Forgetting completely that your entire organization is an HR thing.
Mm-hmm.
So HR don't get to, they're not, they don't have a voice. I don't think they have a strong enough voice
Mm-hmm.
to help influence some of these things. Somebody, and actually an HR manager, reached out to me a couple weeks ago, because she was just feeling so crazily overwhelmed, right? And she just wanted somebody to talk to. And her she was really, really patient care. Her brother had her brother just died from cancer, and now she's nursing a sister who has cancer. So she was just like completely, how can you manage a HR department if that is your state?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And organizations have to recognize stuff like this. They have to.
Well, yes, and many people that know me know that my mom passed away, and my ex-husband had a bicycling accident, and my daughter ended up with epilepsy, and I was buying a house all in 1 month. And I was expected to roll out an entire talent management strategy. And so, yes, it was really tough because it's like I'm supposed to roll out the talent management strategy, but at the same time, where was my mental health at the time? And it was not good, right? So I totally agree with you 100%, Judy. It's very fascinating. Also, I find it's very political, and it can be you have a lot of bureaucracy, because if you are honest and speak the truth, you can lose your job
Mm.
as an HR professional.
Right. I
And
think
it's very scary sometimes.
yeah, I think some of the big challenges as HR professionals is that a lot of the things that we deal with on a regular basis is people, and it can be a very soft science, right? And so when leaders they're used to thinking in numbers, they may just devalue that because they don't see the hard impact or the hard results. And so I think that some of the most successful HR leaders are they're not only experts in those soft skills, but also can utilize data and leverage data in a way to where they can make an impact and show the results based on some of those soft pieces that they're dealing with: mental health, talent management, and development of people, and so forth. And so I know that you're a big believer in the use of data, Judy, and believe that companies should explore ways to leverage data more. How do you typically counsel your clients on this?
Well, let me just kind of go back to what Shar said quickly. The problem is with situations like that, and the one that I just spoke about, the HR manager, it's a culture issue. It really is a culture issue in organizations. And it is amazing to see that we, not only in the Caribbean, that we have issues like that. In the so-called first world countries, you have companies where their culture is toxic and crazy. So that is a culture issue. And the data, using data as well, is an issue of culture, because if you have an organization that isn't data centric. They don't use data to make decisions. Data doesn't drive the decision. If the only data that they're using to drive their decision is financial, then they don't, they just look at the fact, let me see the P&L, let me see what's on my balance sheet, let me see my management accounts, right? But they're not looking at the data across the organization that can really have an impact. So, for example, how do you hire? How do you hire your people? I know for sure that companies that are employers of choice are very, very data driven, extremely data driven. So how do you attract? How do you hire? How do you select? How do you onboard? How do you engage? How do you develop? How do you retain? Even how do you help them to depart? All of that is scientific. It's scientific, and it's totally if it's data driven, then companies are able to make much better decisions. How do you ensure that you have the right person in the right job? It's not just about hiring me because I need a job. Let me tell you, I could apply for a job and I have various qualifications. I could apply for a job because I need a job. I am unemployed. I need a job. I need money. I need to pay my rent, my mortgage, buy food, whatever. So I apply and you hire me. But you don't hire me based on data. So you don't know that 6 months down the road, you will run into problems with me, because that is something I don't like doing. Whatever it is something I don't like doing. So how do we know? So it's like the iceberg, you see the little bit on top, and that's little bit on top is just where you get in the interview. Because I could show you exactly what I want to show you in an interview.
Yeah.
The interview is rehearsed, right? But the whole bit below the ocean that you don't see, that is what the data helps you to uncover, so that you know if you put in the right person in the right job, and you use your data together with the data you've collected in your interview to make the decision. And 9 out of 10 times, the decision is a correct decision to either hire or not hire that person for the particular position. What I see we use a lot here is personality test. Now, a personality test should never be used for a job fit. But again, I don't think that HR knows it. I don't think they know the difference, but I'm going to say that between using a job fit as opposed to a personality test. So you end up getting a personality test, and a personality test will not tell you what my cognitive abilities are. It wouldn't tell you what my work habits are. It won't tell you any of those things.
Right.
Well, I would like to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Sam, and I'll let you talk in a second. I actually just had this conversation with one of my leaders yesterday, okay, because all my employees are going through the TMA method, which is a very different type of tool, because I use this tool as a positive competency and talents and drives and skill set dialogue tool. And so she asked me, she said, what's the difference of the Myers-Briggs and the DISC and all those other assessments? And I said, I see this as a conversation tool so that I can understand your talents, your drives, your ambitions, your passions, and what you love to do in your job. And she goes, oh my gosh, that's so much different than any other type of assessment tool I've ever heard of. And I said, well, that's what makes my company, our company, unique. Okay, go ahead, Sam. I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to say it's a good segue. We're getting towards the top of the hour here, and I do want to acknowledge our sponsor being TMA, and that is the main drive. I mean, it fits well into our conversation today. being that it is a tool that should be used to as a conversational tool to get to know your people, and it's not when we give assessments. You're 100% right, Judy. I mean, it's not for if whether a person gets the job based on that assessment alone. I mean, we need to look at we need to have conversations. We need to understand their personal drivers, their ambitions, and how they actually work with others and so forth. Those are the important things. And we get that through our interactions with people. So what the TMA method employs is it starts with an assessment that allows it, that basically is used as a conversational tool. And you can learn a lot about your employees and your colleagues through an assessment such as this. So if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to reach out to me, or actually what I'll do right now is just the launch our poll, which if you'd like to learn more about the TMA assessment, I can show you that, or you can, if you want to dive into the more details that we've discussed today, feel free to schedule some time. And with Judy, I know she would love to talk to you, or myself or Shar, and any of us would be love to talk to you about these details that we've shared today. And before I'm going to ask people to basically come up with a few questions. We do have a few moments left. If you have any questions for Judy and you would like answered, please drop them in the chat. But and while you're doing that, I want to acknowledge that our speaker for next week is Zachary Weinberger. He's from another data-centric company called Gradar, which focuses on job evaluations and determining fair pay. So the important part of doing a job evaluation and is to look at the job and to ensure that you're leveling them appropriately across the company, and so that you know exactly what job is similar to other jobs across the organization, so you can work on pay fairness and pay them correctly. And so we're going to talk a lot about that in our next conversation next week. So join us next week to meet Zachary. So back to our conversation. So do we have any questions that came in, Shar, to the chat?
I think that the only extra thing I think Sumit was just trying to point out, and because his voice isn't working so well right now, but he talked about when he was consulting a mental health counselor once, and the very first question supposedly a qualified psychologist asked him, meaning Sumit, "Are you the only one in your family to have a mental illness?" And I don't know, I guess looking at this, it was kind of like somewhat offensive. So back to your point, Judy, it's like talking about mental hardships in our lives, I think is a stigma sometimes, and I think COVID is horrible. I think what's happened in our world is horrible. But if we want to look at any silver lining, I would say, look at us now. We're talking about this very sensitive topic.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
This is the silver lining. And as an actual HR, Shar from HR, they used to call me, I didn't even think of mental wellness like I think of it now, just over the past year and a half.
Yeah, and it's true. Me too.
Yeah. So I champion you, Judy. And the fact that you're in the Caribbean, and not only that, the economy and living on an island and trying to keep people employed and taking care of families, and acknowledging not only the leaders are dealing with mental challenges too, and the HR people. I think your work is fantastic, and we appreciate you so much for sharing your wisdom today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Yes, thanks, Judy. And specifically the point you made about being on an island and you're dependent upon those imports to come in to be able to complete your work, to be able to live and those things that we rely on a regular basis. I mean, in a larger mainland, of course, I mean, we enjoy a lot of different sources of products, But when you're reliant on that ship to come in to deliver that product for either to continue to build the products that you do for your people, and to keep your people employed, or just to go to the store to get that fresh produce. Yeah, it's quite important to be able to pivot.
Very scary. Fresh water.
Mhm.
Fresh water. The cruise ships are all shut down, which means there's no tourism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hotels closed, everything is gone. Many days I go to the supermarket and the shelves would just be like empty. I'm like, boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when you learn, like me, oh, I guess I'll eat a can of Pringles. But yeah, it's hard. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. So in closing, I just want to say, please share these discussions. We're all over social media, right, Sam?
That's right.
So
You can
we're on
find
Facebook Live, LinkedIn. I share it all over my social media, so please share. And Judy, we'd love to have you come back sometime and speak with us again.
Just let me know.
Will do. All right. Well, thank you, Judy, for a wonderful conversation, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. So you all take care, and then we'll soon see you next week.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
And thank you so much, Judy. We're still live, so I have to end the recording, but I just want to say thank you once again for another wonderful session. So
No problem. Thank you. My absolute pleasure.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.